Sit back a little bit. Hey everyone, happy Friday. How are you doing today? I'm about to do an awesome podcast with Neil Mason, and we are going to go over how to find the right man and how to communicate effectively and from a man himself. So, Neil, introduce yourself.
Hey out there, my name is Neil Mason, and I'm born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I moved to the U.S. Better part of 23 years ago. So I've been living in Newport Beach and Long Beach for that time. And a couple of things, I played volleyball at Long Beach State on scholarship, and I also ran a very successful girls volleyball club for more than 15 years, which allowed me to have some good insights into girls and women and just have some good insight into that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, what do you do right now? What businesses do you run? Like, pump yourself up a little bit?
So I do a few different things. I do consulting for CEOs and salespeople, and that anywhere from social media training to business development to strategies, and just helping CEOs or people that are running their business understand how to create, just a better product, work with their employees and so forth. I also work with a few other different companies. Work with a company called Alignmed, which is good for posture and so forth. And I also sell alkaline water machines with Kangen. I also do that as well.
Woohoo! Which is what I'm getting into. So we're excited to start. So we're going to share this, but I wanted to tag a few people before I start because I'm sorry we started a little later. And I know there was some questions we had. So this is going to be a podcast. So I'm going to be sure and share this. Ooh, there was one more. And start the podcast in a second. So if you have any questions or you want to engage, ask questions, let me know. Drop it in the comments and we'll get to it during the podcast. So, hey Ashley, how are you doing? Okay, so we have a few questions, but why are you passionate about this? Oh, wait. I'm going to start the podcast. So we're multitasking. That's what we do here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. I have a special guest, Neil Mason, and we are going to be talking about how to find the right man and how to communicate effectively. And I'm so excited to start. Here he is. He is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, and he runs multiple businesses, helps companies. So tell him just a little snippet about yourself.
Yeah, I just played volleyball at Long Beach State, born and raised Canadian. Have a lifelong passion and history of working with women, female athletes. And I've had a lot of business successes and wins, but I've also had some losses. So I found that there are patterns in my wins and patterns in my losses. And anytime I work with women and engage with women, we win. It's a good energy. Anytime I find myself working with narcissistic men, it just really doesn't really bode well with me. So I think I'm pretty got a good opinion on how we can help you guys out there, how we can help the women to find the right man, and more importantly, identify what the wrong man is.
Yeah, okay. So why are you passionate about this? I want to hear.
So I'm born with a single mom. Dad wasn't in my life. And, having mom, basically my mom was my mom and dad. Mm-hmm. My mom's one of 5 sisters. My lawyer is a woman, my doctor is a woman, my accountant's a woman. So I've just had a lot of good, positive women role models in my life. Mm-hmm. So what that's allowed me to do is really connect with women. And also I've got I don't have a lot of masculine male energy.
No?
Even though I play sports and I'm aggressive, I just really understand the importance of women and feminine energy and just being honest and genuine and sincere and vulnerable. It's just something that came naturally to me. Uh-huh. So it's just served me well now that I have the ability to, whether it's coaching or in business, just seeing it from both perspectives.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So what are some ways to identify men from being in their ego and a narcissist or an actual good guy?
Wow, okay, so...
It's a big question. We can break it down if you want.
So the thing I think that you need to understand for dating, right, is people don't change. Yeah, so...
Ding, ding, ding. People do not change. You women out there trying to change a man, stop it.
Yeah, people don't change. So that's important to realize, because when you know the person's not going to change and you accept them for who they are, and they don't change for several reasons. One is some people are just unaware. So whatever faults they have, they don't even know that they're faults. They're just unaware. We can talk more about that later. Some people are just stubborn and they just don't want to change. And some people might be aware of the problem, may be open to change it, but it takes a lot of commitment to make changes. And then they don't have the discipline to change over time. So if you're trying to find the right guy, you want to find the right guy. What you don't want to do is find the wrong guy and try to change him into the right guy.
Yes, so stop doing that, ladies. Yeah. So many women out here, they try to find somebody and they're like, oh, but he has so much potential and I can see him being better, and then they keep going this circle of trying to change, and then they pull away, and then they try and change him, and then they apologize, and it's this vicious circle. Definitely. So I would love to hear like some tips on avoiding that, and some tips on identifying what to run away from, maybe.
So there's a couple things. I think there is somebody for everybody. So there is no good or bad. I'm not really in the position to say what a good person or bad person is, but I know that there is somebody for everybody. So certain qualities that this guy displays might fit this woman better, or vice versa. But you want to make sure that you find the right qualities that fit you best. And before you can find that person, I think you need to understand what's important to you. Yes.
So we will go into that. I'm going to pause for a second. I want to get some internet. I had 2 ladies that really wanted to watch this. Need some internet.
Oh, okay.
They were like, I'm going to do something after I watch your podcast. And so I want to tag them, and I can't do it from here. So we're push and pause. You guys drop some questions below. We're multitasking, and that's what entrepreneurs do. They multitask.
Let's see.
Yeah, where'd it go?
I don't know, right here.
It's not working. Let me see. Ooh. Yeah, no internet. Now it's working. Oh, pop. All right, so I'm going to tag those ladies right away. Drop some questions in the comments, and Joe, I'm going to block you because I don't like you on my feed right now. Who are you? Okay, so where did it?
Well, we can talk about Joe later, because
Joanne. She wanted to watch. And Maya's dope. Maya and I were talking about this earlier. Okay, cool. So I'm going to push play again. Multitasking. Okay, cool. So, yes, continue on that. What are some...
Even talking about you blocking Joe.
Yeah, so I just blocked a guy that was popping onto my Facebook Live because, multitasking. And he was kind of being an a-hole.
Well, but that's the irony of it, right? Joe is who Joe is, right? So we didn't do anything. Joe's just in a bad mood. He's clearly not in a good place. Maybe there's something going on inside of Joe. And instead of us internalizing it and feeling like we did something wrong, because we're actually pretty empathetic, like, hey, what's wrong with Joe? Joe's just not in a good place. So if some woman is dating Joe right now and thinking, well, he's just having a bad day, maybe Joe will be better tomorrow, or maybe if I do something differently, or if I look better or look worse, if I'm nicer. No, Joe is just destined to be miserable and be someone who's just gonna throw hate into the universe. So and that's the thing that I tell people is, especially with men, there's nothing worse than masculine, narcissistic, ugly, toxic male behavior. And those are the types of guys women you have to stay away from. Just
gotta stay away and don't try and change them. I've been in. Okay, so I'm just gonna go into something. So I went and hung out. Ooh, I gotta delete that. Ooh. Okay, I went out on Tuesday and I ran into a super narcissist. So if you guys are in my group, I talked all about this and how he put on these really amazing demeanor, gave me all the compliments, tried to woo me, and I called him out on his shit over and over. And then he's like, he'd try and persuade me and say, I'm trying to be a different person and I went through some hard times and I'm trying to be blah, blah, blah. And he'd circle around and call me insecure. So that was one of the things. that I kept noticing. And then he'd be like, oh, how am I being manipulative? And I'm like, name it. Like, kind of, what would you call that? When they're like, name it, tell me what you mean. But in a
more
confrontational way.
Yep.
And then it was just like going in this vicious circle where, like, if I turned him down, he would just like call me some type of name.
Okay.
Or try and woo me and like, oh, like blah, 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 blah. And it would just be this fucking circle. It was so annoying. I don't know who here has experienced that. Let me know. You know, give me some good feedback, some comments. I want to hear it because I definitely have.
Well, I think there's two things. One is you guys have to trust your gut more, because your initial gut is going to be right most of the time. Your subconscious mind and intuition just knows when you're dealing with the right or wrong person. And then you just have to, when people tell you who they are, you have to listen to them, right? So a lot of times people, and I'm guilty of this too with friends, because from a friendship point of view, because I didn't have a dad in my life, I always want to have narcissistic, aggressive men in my life. It's that lack of a father figure. So I make friends with those guys, and a lot of women date those guys. The problem is those guys aren't going to change.
No.
So it doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to change. But if they show you who they are, if they're displaying violent behavior, they're manipulative, they're lying about things that just don't need to be lied about, or they're too perfect right away.
Yeah, too perfect. I think that's a good part. So
like if a guy just meets you and he's in love with you in the first week, and wants to meet your family, is buying you gifts and is taking you on, extravagant dates in the first week of meeting you, you're not that special.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when guys are just like, oh, I like you, and that guy did that. He was like, I like you. And I'm like, you don't know me. You haven't asked me any questions. He's like, oh, I can see into you. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think you just want to get laid. And just kept calling him out.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, though.
And
if a guy wants to just get laid, he should just say, hey, here's what my intentions are.
Right?
But that's the difference, though, is when you deal with especially narcissistic men, is they want to manipulate you, they want to control the situation, and then they want to make you feel a certain type of way in terms of so that they can control you to get what they want from you.
Why is that? Why?
Well, again, certain people are just, and we can get into this later, but certain people are just wired and designed to do certain things and behave a certain way. And those are people that I suggest women stay away from. Yeah.
And it's so funny because the people around me that I was hanging out with this person, they were like, oh, you guys are so cute and blah, blah, blah. And my friend even thought like, oh, you guys are cute. And then I told her and she was like, oh, like that's intense. Like, it's got some narcissistic, crazy traits.
But you gotta remember, like, and this is gonna be pretty deep and I'm not very political.
Deep is good.
Secretly, your friends don't necessarily want you to be happy.
Oh.
Yeah, they actually kind of take the joy internally in watching their friends suffer, because nobody wants to hear that you have a great marriage, your kids are great, your job is great. Nobody wants to hear that. People want to hear drama, because if your life is great and you're genuinely happy, it makes them feel insecure.
Yeah. To an extent, because I know it's been really hard in California. That is really sad. That I've noticed that in certain groups, but I have noticed, like, my circle of friends and my close friends that have stood by me ups and downs, they want me to be happy, and then we also like to hear the sadness, and we like to be there for each other, but that group of friends is hard to find. So I agree with you, and I also disagree. It's both. So, yeah. It is both. Let's see. So I had a couple questions that some ladies said. So one of them is how to get a man interested in self-development.
It's a really interesting question. So we got to think about self-development. What that is actually the ability for you to say to yourself, I need to improve. So before I can say to myself, I need to improve, I have to acknowledge that there's a fault. And I have to acknowledge, coming from a position, that there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And there is a good subset of the male population to start with that are narcissistic, and they're unaware that they even have flaws and faults. So good luck. That person will never work on self-development, because they're perfect the way they are.
Yeah, so that's the first step is somebody has to realize that there's something wrong with them and be able to admit it. And I've been in abusive relationships, and he was not able to, even when he went to jail, admit that there was something wrong with him.
Yeah.
Unless he was going to jail.
Yeah.
And then when I took that away, he changed his mind. So that's very,
So
very true.
the person has to be willing to develop themselves, which means they have to acknowledge that there's a problem. And most narcissistic men they're unaware. They don't know that there's a problem. And they believe that the rest of the world is a problem, not them. So they gotta fix everybody else, but they're not gonna fix themselves. And then the second question is, because your question is, hey, I think the question is, how do you get a man interested in self-development? Find a man who's like self-development.
Yes, find him as he is.
Yeah.
I meet great guys, and they actually like self-development. They read books, and they don't just read it, because I've met guys that read books, and I'm like, oh, you've read that book, but then I look at their life and their brain and their internal and external world, and they don't apply the techniques. Like Think and Grow Rich, you can read that book 100 times and not ever be rich, but you have to actually apply what you're reading to make it useful. And that's why you gotta know the difference.
Yeah, if you want to find a man who wants to support you in your self-development and who wants to work on self-development, find that guy initially. Because someone who doesn't have goals, doesn't have dreams, doesn't read, doesn't value self-development, they're not all of a sudden going to have you come into their life and change their world. It's just not going to happen.
Yep, it's so true. And another question somebody asked was how to communicate your feelings. This is hard. I've definitely learned some, helps, some tips, but what would you say?
I just saw a comment that I look like a guy on Snapchat. I don't use Snapchat, so it's definitely not me. But so in terms of communicating your feelings, I think the first thing is you have to find someone who's receptive to communication. Certain people are just not designed and wired to communicate. Mm-hmm. So certain people, they're closed off. They're isolated. They're not someone who really wants to communicate. So you have to identify initially how important is communication, and that's something you actually should talk about on the first couple dates. Is how well do you communicate? So I'll give an example. If you meet somebody and I've never done online dating. I've never done Bumble or Tinder or Snap, whatever. I just haven't. I think people who do that, good for them. I just haven't. But if you meet someone on one of these sites and then you text message them or DM them, and then you set up your date through DM and text, and then you don't actually talk to them until your first date, that to me is slightly concerning because everything's done by text. Yeah. Right? So you want to find a man who you can communicate with, maybe pick up the phone and call him. Yeah. And have a conversation. Yeah. And if the conversation is short and it immediately goes back to text, don't be surprised in 3 months when he's not someone who's going to communicate with you because he's hiding behind the keyboard. Mm-hmm.
And for me, I like to answer this question as well, is how to communicate more effectively on that aspect and open up communication is you open up. Be the person you want to attract. And so what I do when I date and when I communicate and when I text, I open up. Yep. I open up my feelings. I ask them questions, but I open up, and sometimes I'm the first one that has the long text messages that are more in depth and, opening up my life. And then usually if they're interested, they will respond and have more open, in-depth communication. Yep. But, sometimes someone's got to start it.
So what I would say is, with regards to communication, you have to communication is interesting because it's obviously the core of every relationship, right? Is the ability to talk to each other and to listen to each other. And what I like to do in terms of sales or in business is just say, look, do you like to communicate? Yeah. Do you like to talk?
That's great.
Some men will say no.
There you go.
No means no, right?
Simple.
Right? But it's funny. It's just like in sales, the first thing I do when I'm selling something is just ask the customer, how do you want to buy? And they're like, what do you mean? Do you make decisions quickly or slowly? Do you like to be pressured? Do you like to take your time? Yeah. Are you impulsive or are you more analytical and you want to research? And they're going to tell you. So if you meet a guy and you want him to communicate just from day one, say, hey, do you like to communicate?
Yes, there we go. You guys write some notes here. This is some sales notes as well. Like, write those questions down and use them. Like, come on, get out your paper and do that. This is some gold stuff. So let's see. I am curious. Yes, this has happened to me. So I have a question.
Okay.
One of the girls said that when she brought up that the guy made a joke to her and it hurt her feelings, and when she brought it up, he said she's too emotional.
Okay.
And that he's just joking. What would you say?
So there's a couple things. Two terms I use is one is empathy, and empathy is the ability for you to feel for other people, to feel how they feel, and that's really important. If you're a narcissistic person, especially a narcissistic man, they don't have the ability to feel empathy. The second thing is emotionality, and that's for other people to feel your emotions and to feel you when you're communicating with them. So if somebody makes a joke at your expense and it hurts your feelings and they don't understand that it's a joke, that it hurt you, that means they're probably lacking in narcissism, and they're probably, very low on the emotionality score.
Okay, so FYI, this happened to me. This was a friend that messaged today, and it brought me back to a relationship that became abusive. And he would say that all the time. He would say, I'm too emotional all the time.
He would say that you're too emotional.
Yeah. And I would say, like, his joking hurt my feelings, and he was putting me down, and it kept developing. It kept getting worse, and eventually,
but you gotta listen to that statement you just said. He kept putting me down.
And jokes.
But, like, there's always truth in jest, and there's no reason to really put anybody else down. End of story. So if you're a woman who finds comfort in a man who's going to put you down, then you got to look at yourself, right? Like, real talk.
Yeah.
Because if someone's putting you down consistently, even if it's a quote unquote joke, that's not a joke. Like, there's no reason. I mean, life is hard, life is short, life is difficult as it is. Why would we want to be putting anybody down, especially somebody that you're dating?
Yeah. So, and that's just a cop out, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Again, it's like a friend. If you have a friend of yours who's always picking on you or bullying you, bullying is the worst. And I didn't realize it until I started doing more research, because what bullying does is it allows you to put up a guard and allows you to not be authentic, because you want to basically curry favor with the bully. So if you have somebody who's picking on you, it's probably because they've been picked on. And people that have been picked on have been wounded deeply to the core because they don't learn to trust people. So if you're dating someone who's been bullied or they've been picked on, and they're now taking it out on you and bullying you and putting you down, you got to run, because that person's not going to change.
Yeah, and him saying that, I'm like kind of getting a realization. Yeah. And the funny thing is those people, those relationships usually are the most, the fun ones, and they're the up and down ones. They're the ones that you're just like, this is crazy, this feels nuts, I'm so up, but then I'm so down. And that was it too. And from the outside perspective, all of my friends loved him. All of my friends.
Well, they only saw the good stuff.
Yeah. They only did.
Part of the reason that in dating relationships we're attracted to people that where they're the emotional roller coasters. Think about a movie, right? If you go and watch a movie and, boy and girl are born, a week apart, they live in the same neighborhood, they go to all the same schools together. In middle school, they have a crush. Then in elementary school, they kind of hold hands. And then they date in high school. He's a football player. She's a prom queen. They get married. They have 3 kids. They live happily ever after. The end. That's the boring movie. Right? Yeah. Nobody wants to watch that movie. What you want to watch is there's drama, there's struggle. She cheats on him. He cheats on her. He goes away. She dates somebody else. Somebody gets hurt. They fight. They break up. They cheat. They this. They that. It's up. It's down. And at the end of the movie, they get together. Yeah. That's drama, and drama is emotional roller coasters.
And
right?
that's what we get programmed to.
Yep. Which is okay. But if you actually want to find somebody who you really connect with, there's going to be, need for communication. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be stuff where, it's not perfect at all times, but it should be relatively easygoing, and you should view the world the same way. And if someone's picking on you and bullying you and putting you down and lying, it shouldn't feel awkward.
And to communicate and to open up and to tell them that, hey, this hurts my feelings. They shouldn't want to keep continuing. Why is it such a priority to make a joke and make you feel bad?
Yep, I agree.
Okay. So let's see if there's any other questions coming up. So one of the girls asked how to not let the fears of confusion get in the way in a relationship.
The fears and confusion?
Yeah, I guess so. I think she meant like the ups and the downs and the confusion of, you know, are they all the way in, and how to not let her fear get in the way.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to there's three types of people that I found that you need, three types of qualities in people you need to evaluate. Okay, the first one you need to think about is the narcissism versus the empath. And the narcissism, we won't get into it a lot right this second, but there's certain key traits in narcissism. The two of them are vanity and authority. That kind of defines them. Vanity being they love themselves. They're looking in mirrors. Normally they're good looking. They keep themselves in a certain level of condition, and they're physically, that's important to them, and that's okay. That's the vanity side of it. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is authoritative. They're always right. Mm-hmm. You can't question them. They're always right. They're stubbornly right. They're the boss. They're in charge. It's their way or the highway. Mm-hmm. And then you have the person that has all the above, right? They're both. So those are the levels of narcissism that you have to at least be aware of, and we could talk about later. On the flip side of that is insecurities. There's guys that you meet that are just, they don't like themselves. They don't think they're good enough looking. They're always doubting themselves. They're always questioning themselves, and that's not really attractive either. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you want to look at Machiavellianism or cunningness and sneakiness, where people are manipulative. They lie. They're sneaky. They're devious. They're cynical. Mm-hmm. The world is going to come to an end. I better get you before you get me. Like, they're just very. And those are people who have had really troubled lives. People have hurt them. They've been cheated on. They've been stolen from. They've been bullied. Mm-hmm. So they're very skeptical and cynical. And those people are just really hard to deal with, because it doesn't matter how bright your flame is, they're going to douse it. Well, I'm glad you're happy today, but you know what? This is not going to be a good week coming up. I can feel it. Yeah. And they're always negative. And then the last group and then the flip side of that would be very trusting people. Mm-hmm. Like, their car door is always unlocked. They're just trust everybody. They're women friendly, sometimes to a fault.
Yeah, that's some of my friends.
And those are, so women will like the guy who's really an empath and really open and trusting. Women are like, he's too nice. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. And but he's also the guy that's not maybe gonna have the six pack because he doesn't really care how he looks as much, or he's really sweet and he's honest, but that's boring. But then the guy who's more narcissistic and more manipulative, he's gonna win you over, take you on great dates, steal you away from your boyfriend, take you on, fast cars and fun times. But then all of a sudden it's ups and downs, and he doesn't call you for a week. Yeah, and doesn't talk to you, and says all this shit right at the beginning. At the beginning. This is a key indicator, I think, is, oh my gosh, I'm so into you, like, I love you, I want to be with you, I want to marry you, blah, 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 but then disappears. Or then is down and up and down, and you're just like, well, what about this? But then a lot of women hold on to that part. They just hold on to it for dear life. Like, I love that, like, feeling so cherished and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. What I've found is, as you kind of go to it a little slower, and they start liking you over time, they're a little bit more safe and secure with their heart, not just pouring it all over the place. Those relationships last longer, and they mean it. So. Well, one thing women out there, and you guys aren't going to want to hear this, but if a guy sees you and he likes you that much, it's not you, because you're not that special. That's a hard pill to swallow. But we want to feel that way, like, oh my God, they like me so much, it must be me. No, it's probably them. They fall quickly. So if a guy falls for you quickly, and if you meet a guy and he's tall, he's good looking, he's rich, he's smart, he's funny, he's charming, why is he single? Yeah, well, and why is he falling so quickly? Yeah. Is he just BSing you? But a lot of the times, because we have our walls up, and we protect our ego, we don't want to believe that someone is running game on us, or is playing us, or someone is manipulating us. We believe that, man, finally this guy, Prince Charming, finally found me. And then women fall for that. Yeah, I don't. I'm the opposite. Yeah. But I think I'm on the complete opposite side. So when I hear men that say compliments to me, so this is something I'm trying to work on, I automatically think they're trying to get something from me. Yep.
I automatically am like, you're trying to smooze me, you're trying to get in my pants, and I don't trust you. And that's probably what it is, huh?
Well, but again, everyone's different. There's no good
Yeah.
or bad. We're all different.
Yeah.
Your guard is up because maybe you've been burned in the past. So you're like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to make sure that, I don't get hurt.
Yeah.
So your guard is up, which is good. But the problem is you actually might meet a good guy, but your guard is going to be up. And then you're also, when your guard is up in life, you attract people whose guard is up because then you both see the world the same way.
And so when I met like that narcissist the other time, he kept saying like, oh, you have such a guard up. And I was like, oh, I do. So I kept talking to him, but that was kind of manipulative, don't you think?
Very.
So, but I also was like, well, maybe I should try and put my guard down. And I was like, but he's just manipulating me. And I was like, do I always think people are manipulating me? And I was like, yes. So those narcissistic people, they know how to get in your brain. They do.
Well, so what I would say is take it back to the core of how you meet somebody and just strip it down to how you meet them and what's the context.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you actually, this guy you met, I don't know the backstory, but how did you meet him?
Out at a bar.
Okay, and he just came up to you and started talking to you and stuff? Or what was the first thing he said to you?
I don't know. But one thing, he made me come to him. And I was like, I don't like that. It bugs me. I don't know why.
But it didn't feel right, but you still did it.
Yes, see?
So you went against your intuition.
See, I did. And then again, I had another intuition and I went against it. So yes, pretty shiny object syndrome. Don't do that. Listen to your gut, and my gut was right. My gut was right.
Yeah, and again, like it's there's no perfect person.
Yeah.
Because a guy could be narcissistic and that's a fault, but if a guy is too nice, it comes from a place of insecurity and genuine not belief in himself. So there's no right or wrong. You just need to know what you want and then understand the type of person that you choose. There's going to be good and bad. Can you deal with the bad qualities?
Yeah.
And there's certain qualities though we didn't get. The third thing is psychoticism. And there are crazy people in the world. People that will put their hands on a woman, people that will be abusive, people that will go to jail, people that will hurt other people physically and emotionally. And there's no reason to date those people. But there are women who, for some reason, find that attractive. And then they get in those situations, they wonder what happened. So when I coach women, I coach a lot of women in married couples, I tell them, if you're got any level of psychoticism in your relationship, men or women, abuse, physical abuse, someone's laying hands on another person, you gotta run because that stuff doesn't go away.
It doesn't. It gets worse. And I have several friends in this happens, and every single one, they think it's gonna get better. It gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse. Every single time you forgive them, it gets worse. It gets worse because they're like, oh, I can get away with that. Let's see what I can push. Because people naturally push boundaries. I do. I'm a human. I push boundaries. When someone doesn't draw a line, I naturally kind of push it. And I'm high D, so I naturally kind of do that. But when someone puts me in my place, I'm like, boundary, okay, noted, won't do that. But if they don't ever say what their boundaries are, you don't know what they are.
So I agree with you that you teach people how to treat you. That's for about 70% of the people. Certain people will never follow rules and will never follow boundaries. And someone who's psychotic, you need to setting boundaries won't help them because they're psychotic. Or someone who's highly narcissistic, they don't follow rules because they're authoritative. So you can set all the rules you want. They're going to say to you, no, here's how it's going to be. And a lot of the times that level of masculinity and aggression, women are like, I like that. I like my man I want a man who's going to fight for me. I want a man who's going to put other people in their place. And women are attracted to that macho male ego, which is normal, right? So again, as a woman, if you want to date a guy who's tall, good looking, chiseled, aggressive, will fight for you, will guard you, will stand up for you, but then you're surprised when he yells at you. You're like, wait a minute, like people don't change.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. You're not going to date a guy who's going to fight for you in a bar, but then who's also a big teddy bear and will never lay his hands on you. It's just, you get one or the other. You're not going to get the perfect human being.
Yep. I completely agree with that. 100%. It's like ding, 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 all these past things. Okay, so let's see if there's any others. Oh, I had a good question. So one of these girls were wondering, oh, for sure. So she was wondering how she can keep being an individual when she's dating someone that she like really, really, really feels like a connection with. And I mean, I have answers to this, but I want to hear from the guy.
What do you mean? So how can she maintain her individuality but also develop the relationship?
Yeah, because guys, if you don't know this, they tend to like ask for things, and women are more passive, and they want to be accommodating. So they want to be like, oh yes, I have time, and then they put their workout schedule to the side. Or I wanted to go on a date on Friday, but you have your workout on Friday or your podcast, whatever it is, and then you keep cutting off what you usually do and what defines you. And then I think that's kind of what she's asking, like, how do you maybe communicate that? Or what do you think about that? Like, don't men want women to still do what they were doing?
So I just saw a question go by in a comment. We're speaking in generalities right now, so we're not talking about every specific situation, and there are exceptions to the rule. And you may find someone who can be positive and can be sweet, but can also fight for you. There's exceptions to the rule, but the exceptions make the rule.
Yeah.
Right? So just want to make that clear, guys. You know, we're going to be doing this podcast for a short period of time. We can't get into every situation. We're just giving generalities.
Yeah.
But I will say that if you're betting that you're going to go to Vegas and roll double six 3 or 4 times in a row, it does happen. But I wouldn't bet my mortgage on it.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree with that. Like, he would defend you. That is a whole different story. You know, if it deems necessary, but maybe not if someone just gave you a cat call and then he punched him. That's kind of a little extreme, don't you think?
Well, and again, the point I'm trying to make is it's about how people view the world, right? So I'm not saying that there's no exceptions to the rule. I'm saying that in generality, the guy who's getting in a lot of bar fights is the guy who, when you guys are arguing with each other, might raise his voice quicker. And I don't mean raise his voice in this, because I've got a loud voice, but there's a difference between I have a loud projected voice and I raise it at you.
Yeah.
Versus, so you just want to make sure that you see those warning signs. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm just, as a generality, I'm throwing things out there.
Yeah.
So
and being, defending if somebody hurts you, or I don't know, that's definitely different.
But there's also women who want their man to fight for them.
Okay.
And they want that aggression.
Okay.
And you see it, it's the bad boy. He rides in on his motorbike, his Harley. He rides into town, he drives into town in his sports car. He rides in on his horse. He's a cowboy. Well, yeah, there are women who like the cowboy, bad boy types. I mean, the whole romance novels are based on the bad boy, who the woman turns into the good boy. But those are romance novels in life. The guy's riding in on his horse or his Harley, or, has got, is the alpha male. He also is not going to be the one that's going to be super soft and sweet and accommodated. He's going to be the alpha man.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just overall we're generalizing, but we're not trying to. And there's exceptions. If you're out there right now and you have that perfect man, I'm happy for you.
That's great. There are exceptions. Great.
But if you're that person, you're good.
Yeah.
But most women are looking for that person, and they're trying to change the wrong person.
And I don't like that. I actually hate it. I hate it. Hate when there's fighting. Yeah. I mean, if there's like someone has to stop someone, cool. Like, or prevent someone from getting killed or hurt, great. But I do not like when people like look to fight, or you said something to my woman. I don't like that. I don't know. It depends, but
one thing is
start the fight.
We just saw a comment that said a true alpha man doesn't have to fight. That is a genius comment.
Yeah.
But the word there is true. Most narcissistic men and most men that have bravado and ego, or the bully, they're not really secure. Yeah. And they're not true alphas.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between an alpha man and a narcissistic man. An alpha man is a man where other men want to follow. A narcissistic man normally doesn't have people following him because he's too much in his own world and he's too much involved in himself, and he doesn't even understand connection, because a real alpha man can connect with men and women. The guy who's a beta man but who acts like he's an alpha, who's narcissistic, deep down inside, those guys are very deeply insecure.
Yeah.
Right? So you're right. If you have a true alpha man that really is self-sufficient, who's confident, who can, give a woman the praise and credit she deserves and is not taking away from her, that guy is the guy you want. But don't be fooled. There's a lot of macho men out there who are getting in fights who come across as alphas. They're not alphas, they're betas.
Yeah. And they're just trying to assert themselves and prove something over and over.
100%. Yeah, those are good comments.
Let's see if there was any others. Yep. Let's see.
And guys, a lot of the stuff that I'm discussing right now is not just based on my opinion. I've done a lot of reading and studying. There's a lot of tests out there. We can talk about the tests later that you guys can take. And I actually suggest, there's a test I found online, which takes 10 minutes, that I suggest that you should take, everybody, and you should have everybody in your life take, because what it does is it gives you an insight into who you are. And it's not a personality type test, it's a worldview test, how you see the world. I suggest that everybody takes that. So a lot of the stuff I'm mentioning is not based on my opinion. I'm not that smart, but I'm smart enough to read enough and to understand that, you know what, let me try to figure some stuff out. And there's patterns. And the reason I relate to women is, as a man, I'm very insecure as a man, and I can acknowledge that. Growing up with, being a black man, single mom, no dad, being poor, I didn't understand a lot of why things weren't given to me, right? So I have a lot of levels of insecurity. So because of that, and I didn't have a dad in my life, I said, I need to attract macho male figures to be my friends, my business partners, my mentors. But those guys would take advantage of me because I'm really insecure and easygoing. And then they would actually look to use me and take, and have me for their benefit.
Yeah.
Right? So people are looking at me like, I'm 6'5", 240 pounds. I look like I'm more narcissistic, more alpha, but I'm really not. And that's the thing though, right? Is really getting to the core of people and understanding people, right? So that's what allows me to work with women, to coach girls, and to even connect here, is because I know what it looks like to have a narcissistic guy take advantage of me and steal a lot of money from me and hurt my business. I know. And I also know that I keep finding those guys going, hey, maybe it was me. But it wasn't me. It was, I got in business with guys who were crooks.
Yep.
Or I tried to partner or tried to work with people or try to have friends with people that always exerted dominance.
Yep.
So it's not just a dating relationship, it's also friendships.
Yep.
And the same women that date narcissistic asshole men, their girlfriends are the same way. They're alpha women. And there's conflict with their friends. So that's why for you guys, it's get to know yourself, understand yourself, go see a psychologist, a therapist, and know yourself, because you can't change yourself.
Okay. Yes, I completely agree. And I think we will be wrapping up unless there's any other questions. Let's see. So I think that was great. Okay, good. We're good on time too. You guys have any other questions? What did you like about this? Go ahead, tag your friends if they need to hear some of this. Maybe you have a friend that's struggling with abuse. Maybe you could dare to tag her. I know I tagged some people that, I tagged enough that you don't know who it is, that they may need to hear this, and you may save a life. So,
one thing I want to maybe end with, some key tips that you guys, women, can look for in men. Are we done?
I'll start it again.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
sure?
So what are some good tips?
Yeah, so a couple things to look for, warning signs. Okay, number one is pride. If you meet a man who's really proud of everything, where they're from, what they do, who's in their life, they're just proud of everything. And the pride where it's like they can't back down because their pride takes charge. Pride is really, really a telltale sign of someone you got to be careful with. Okay. The second one is sensitivity. So we talked about someone who's overly sensitive and they can never have the joke on them, or they take everything personal. Sensitivity is really, really a big deal, because the guy who's really secure has thick skin, but someone who's really sensitive, if you poke a little bit of fun at them or something happens in public where they get a drink spilled on them? Do they puff up their chest? You stepped on my shoes, you spilt my drink, what's going? Or are they like, hey man, no big deal. It's not a big deal. I got to stand on my shirt. It's no big. But if you have a man that's overly proud or overly sensitive, that is something that's a big warning sign. And the last one is stubbornness.
Yep.
And if you have a friend who it's got to be there, no, we're going to this place tonight. Yeah. Well, honey, I'm in the mood to have a tie. No, I want this. Or, honey, we're going to do this tonight. No, I want that. And they're really stubborn about everything. Stubbornness is something where it doesn't change. Prideful, insensitive, and stubbornness, if you see those traits in your boyfriend or in your man, and it keeps happening over, and there's little levels of it with everybody. We all have our level. And pride is good because pride drives us to be better. Right? And stubbornness is good because you don't quit. And sensitivity is good because you gotta, you don't want people walking all over you. But when it gets overly,
like over enough, and I completely agree. I completely agree. Those are all the things.
So
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please leave me some reviews in the comments. I want to hear what you think. Tag any of your friends. Share this. And there will be some links in the bio for the podcast. This will be on my podcast. And so you can go ahead and take the quiz. And in fact, I'll just tell you what it is. It's tailopez.com/quiz, right? Yeah. So for the people tuning in, it's Tai Lopez, TAI Lopez.com/quiz. Or the link will be in the bio for my podcast. And I thank you guys so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day. Cool, guys. Thank you. I hope you have a great Friday. Bye-bye. Go watch it. Tag your friends.